Hello everyone, welcome to our video. My name is Russell Crampin and I'm the Managing Director for Axions in the UK. And I'm joined today by Chris Gilmour.
Hi, my name is Chris Gilmour. I'm the CTO for Axions in the UK. And today we're going to talk through SASE.
So Chris, we're here today talking about SASE.
Yeah.
But as a very clever technical person that I'm not, can you help me understand what is SASE?
Sure. So SASE in essence is an architectural model. It was first coined by Gartner. They're very good at throwing grenades out into the world of new models and then expecting the world to catch up. But fundamentally, it's an architecture that pulls together a number of different component parts. And fundamentally, it's the understanding that the network and the security are starting to kind of merge together and that you can't have them as individual silos anymore. So if you go by the definitions of the architectural model, it's intelligent networking, which typically ends up being SD-WAN. And then it's a cloud security component, which offers a number of different functions and features that include secure web gateway, CASB, data loss prevention, ZTNA, and firewall as a service. We'll come into a lot of the definitions of those later.
I'll ask you about what ZTNA is later, so that's good.
Fundamentally, it's a number of security functions and features that have been abstracted and put into the cloud, tied up with an intelligent network that dynamically routes the traffic the best way through. So it's the next generation of network and security.
So it's really bringing together that intelligent networking that we've been working with for over a decade now. And then that traditional security firewall boundary, now they're being really brought together as one cohesive architecture.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, the moment you put SD-WAN into an environment, you've broken most of the security policies and architectures anyway. Historically, if you looked at the way networks were architected, all the traffic was pulled back to certain locations and then piped out to the internet from there. And that meant that all the security was basically appliances on those egress points. So a data center, typically. As soon as you go to direct internet access to all your locations, you've broken it because you're no longer dragging traffic back there to then go out. So you need to look at a completely new model that either applies to security everywhere at all of your locations, or you look at where most of the traffic and most of the users are actually moving to and accessing, which is the cloud.
Got it.
So it's that kind of realization that by applying SD-WAN and giving people direct internet access from each location, you're breaking pretty much most of the security models that are applying in legacy systems.
So why is it such a hot topic this year? What's changed? What's been happening to make it a reality today?
I think it has been relevant for a number of years. I think it's taken a bit of time for the momentum to build. It's like all things, you can have the nicest, greatest, shiniest new thing in the world. If people are still under contract with their infrastructure as is, they're going to wait until that contract term finishes before they then look at the next iteration. So even though there's been interest for a while, it's taken a couple of years for people to start to migrate out of their legacy contracts and now look at the art of the possible. But also you're looking more and more at people moving more into the cloud. You're looking at a real key kicker for it is the fact that since COVID, hybrid working is now here, right? You might be in the office 1 or 4 days a week, but typically there's very few people that are in the office 5 days a week now. And so that mobile workforce has meant that they've had to look for new ways of securing those and making sure that as an organization, you give them the tools to be able to work, but also the tools to protect your business. So I think the kind of momentum has been building for a number of years, but we're now starting to get to the point where a lot of big companies are starting to come out of their existing legacy contracts. They're starting to look through it. We're actually now dealing ourselves with customers who are coming out of the first set of iterations of the first contracts with the early SASE architectures. And the interesting thing there is that they're now a lot more aware of what they actually want. When you first walk into a brand new architecture, to a certain extent, you know roughly what kind of parameters you're looking for, but you're a little bit in the dark as to exactly what that should look like. Once you've been through a contract and you had a kind of a term of a service for running an SD-WAN or an SSE or a SASE contract, you understand more about what kind of things you actually need now as a business, what works, what doesn't work. So what we're seeing now is people are becoming a lot more discerning as to how they build the architecture, whether that be single vendor or multi-vendor. They've got very clear, defined ideas as to what things they want to see in that service.
So is it so maybe that for me then is a mixture of things. So, we've been implementing successful large projects for SD-WAN for over a decade now.
Fine,
So it's the evolution of that. And then you've got, as you say, there's this hybrid worker mentality. So you're no longer plugging in with your hard cable anymore. That day is dead, or very limited, let's say. And so that opens another threat vector into this clever networking. You've got, and I guess as well, let's not shy away from it, we're probably under attack and a lot more scrutiny and a lot more threat landscape that's happening. We can talk more about the direct security later as well. But it almost feels as well like we're on the hype curve as well. So you said earlier that it was a phrase coined by Gartner, and hopefully, well, there might be some Gartner people listening, but that tends to generate the interest in the market, and then we get the trough of disillusionment when people put it in and it's not quite what they hoped for. Do you feel then there's a maturity and experience and there's version 2.0 of this architecture now rather than the first implementation? So are all those things combining to really make it, this is the year to get real with this stuff?
I think so. I think we're definitely seeing SASE onto that kind of rise in
that maturity curve.
Yes. So the early adopters have been in. The early adopters have hit all of the kind of challenges, and we've worked around that. And there are a lot of the ones that are driving the way that the services need to look now. So we're working quite a lot with customers who have been there early on and have had the scars.
Yeah,
it's not quite worked the way that they want it to work, and now they have very clear, defined ideas as to what they want to do it. But yeah, I think definitely, I think that the rise in hybrid working, which is becoming only ever kind of increasing, the increasing attack profiles and every second day there's a challenge coming in, whether it's directly or through supply chain. I think that one of the key things that SASE gives you as an organization is that because you're building a policy-based approach to your users, and it is user-based, once you get the policies right, they apply anywhere. So from a CISO's perspective, what you really, really want is the ability to say, if I really focus on my policies, they're applied, and it's applied consistently across all of my user base, irrespective of whether they're at home, in the office, in a hotel, an airport, cafe. That's the kind of key thing that's kind of come out of the SASE architecture is, yes, there's the clever networking. It's been around for 10 years, as you said before, quite frightening, it's been 10 years. But the key piece for me is that hybrid worker and being able to honestly look at your kind of security policies and say, yes, they're fit for purpose across my entire user base, irrespective of where they are.
Yeah. So it really allows that hybrid working. So,
yeah.
We talk about silent network. You want a secure silent network that just does what it's meant to do to help users in the business get a great experience on their applications and be safe when they're doing it. So
100%.
I think I've got it. So this is the year for SASE.
This is the year for SASE.
Some people the second time round, and we can help them with that as well. But this is a year of it. Let's go for it.
Aggressive growth in SASE.
Excellent. Yeah. So we've talked about the benefits of SASE, but for CISOs that may be watching, what message could they really take away of why this is for them?
I think the key message is consistency. One of the biggest pains is trying to identify what your security posture needs to be and how to try and secure your users. But then the biggest headache generally is making sure that all of your users are then covered by that, irrespective of where they are. So one of the things that the SASE architecture gives you is that ability to offer a consistent approach to deploying your security posture. So the CISO has to focus then on the policy and making sure that they are properly applicable and right for the organization. But once that focus has been done, it's then able to be consistently applied across all users, irrespective of where in the office, hotels, airports, cafes.
And you can then define that for each different user profile.
100%.
And then wherever, so my profile will be different to yours, and wherever I am and logging in, it builds it around that, rather than if I plug into the hard network or I'm in a VPN, that doesn't matter anymore. It's about who I am and who you are.
Yeah.
And the level of trust the business has with me, and the level of business trust has.
Yeah, level of trust I have. But fundamentally, it's about user security, and you can isolate down to the individual user, or you can have aggregate groups of users that are typical kind of. But yeah, fundamentally, it's a user-based security, but consistently applied.
So, Chris, obviously, you talk to a lot of businesses, a lot of different levels of people in lots of different organisations.
Yeah.
So, what do you think are the main challenges that these organisations have with their legacy architectures that SASE might be something for them to consider?
I don't think there's any organisations out there that are lacking too many tools. I think that one of the key things that SASE hopes to help with is simplification. A lot of organizations with legacy architectures, the challenges they've got are visibility, but also integration. If you've got lots and lots of disparate platforms doing lots and lots of different things, you have to make sure they're all properly integrated. Otherwise, they're almost useless and there's no point in them being there. Whereas with a SASE architecture, you're looking at that integration being part of the architecture. So it means that you're looking at less tools, you're simplifying your infrastructure, and you're actually making sure that the integrations that you have got are in place so that they implement the platform's working as optimally as possible.
Because that's what always seems to me, that you get different point solutions and there's another startup that's got a clever bit of software and you layer that on and you layer the next one on and you bonk something else on, and then you've got this kind of patchwork quilt of different tools, and probably overlaps in there and holes in other parts of it as well. And so is that what you're trying to get at? That then this starts, probably can't replace all of those, but it starts to kind of look at the main middle part of it that these other ones can bolt in potentially?
Certainly. I mean, you look at the SSE platform, so the secure service edge part of the SASE architecture, which is the cloud security element. If you look at the way that they're architected now, it's becoming increasingly a platform. So it's platformization of security. This is a trend that's been happening across security full stop. And a lot of the large vendors have been trying to fold as many functions and features into appliances as possible, or platforms or fabrics or integrated solutions as possible. The point being is saying that it may not be perfect in every one of those, but if it's integrated properly, it offers a better solution to you than best of breed of everything that's poorly integrated together. And the SSE platforms are increasingly moving that way as well. So you're looking beyond the traditional 5 sets of features that make up the SSE as per Gartner's definition, and you're now looking at cloud security posture management and a few other elements being brought into that platform, because it offers a single point of egress. So once you're seeing the traffic, you can then apply a number of different security measures to it. So yes, so platformization is coming to the SSE world. So the vendors and the technologies that you see in that space are starting to increment more and more and more features. The key benefits of the user being, I don't have to buy more and more and more platforms. I don't have to try and integrate them. I don't have to have more visibility. I can actually have one vendor that gives me a wider range of posture and protection, but also visibility and sort of care there.
So you get a bit of simplification, you get a bit of consolidation. So clearly the choice of platform, because if this is going to be the foundation, is really, really important. And I'm sure we'll cover that later.
Certainly will.
So Chris, you've already mentioned the ZTNA.
Yeah.
Zero trust, I think it's the same kind of thing. So maybe you could help me understand, what is ZTNA and why is it relevant in the SASE conversation?
Sure. So I think once you get your head around the principle that we can no longer just stick our arms around people and put a firewall in front of them and that's them secured as a kind of the whole kind of wall and castle and moat approach to securing users, because people are disparate around offices, working in hotels, cafes, that the perimeter has moved to basically identity. So the way that you're now looking at architecting security is around the user and identity, and identifying that user and what they're able to do and what they're able to not do. And then it's about continuous verification of this. So when you log in the morning through our platform, you are authorized as you with your role and the authentications and the approvals you've got to access certain things. But it'll be continually checking you. It'll be continually checking posture, location, risk, a number of location, a number of other kind of parameters. So that at any point, if it deems that you're not secure anymore, it will either reduce your privileges or it will just in effect isolate you out. So it's moving from a model where everyone in finance gets access to everything in the finance drive, to the finance director gets access to the files he needs to, the financial accountants get access to the files that they need to, which might be completely disparate. And in effect, it's a least privilege model. So it's saying you are only allowed to get access to the things you really, really need to. And we don't really trust that you're you. So we're going to make you verify yourself continually through the process. So it's taking things from a default implicit trust to a default implicit distrust.
So is the difference now, we were talking earlier about plugging in a cable. So in the old days, I could plug in a cable, then I'm on the network and I can get access to stuff. Whereas now what we're saying is it doesn't matter how you plug in or what device, I guess, that you're coming in on.
No.
It's about what is your user credentials, who are you, what are you allowed to, and if it's not explicit, then it's nothing. And then obviously there's a lot of identity checking to make sure it is actually me, not just that simple password that I've copied off someone. Is that the fundamental difference now that we're moving to?
Yeah, 100%. So we've got to the point now where in the zero trust architecture, we can have the wireless APs as an enforcement point. The switch in the LAN can be an enforcement point. The wide area network can be an enforcement point. The cloud security can be an enforcement point. So what we're trying to do is say, we're authorizing you to get into this access to do these things at the moment. And we'll check that you're still the same person, the same kind of, and the risk hasn't changed in a continual fashion. And if it does, we'll then retrieve those approvals and privileges. So zero trust network access is applying that zero trust user, very specific security policy model to remote access into infrastructure. So it's basically saying, rather than of days of old, I had a VPN in, VPN got me onto the local network, and then basically it was a flat network again. I could do whatever I liked. Back to your model of plugging in. What I've done is I've virtually plugged in through the internet. ZTNA is a remote access model, but it's built on the principles of zero trust. So yes, you get the same place as a VPN, but you're only then allowed to go into the tools and applications that you're meant to. Your posture's continually checked. You're very, very visible from a visibility and logging and audit perspective. So it's about bringing a lot of control to that remote access part, but with the zero trust principles as the kind of key underlying.
And does that then, we have a lot of information about lurkers, so people that get access to a network and they hop in through one port, and then once they're in, they sit there, and then they're then traversing this flat network that you described. So is this then saying, right, well, hopefully they won't get in the first place, but if they do, then they're blocked again and again and again because they're continuously being checked? Is that what this will help with?
Yes. So zero trust architecture basically will authenticate you as a user pretty much on a continual process the whole way through the infrastructure. So if someone was to get access to a node within your infrastructure, part of zero trust as well is about microsegmentation of your infrastructure, which is basically breaking it into lots of little chunks. So rather than one large flat open network, which means if you get in, you can see everything on that network, it's in effect saying this office. So I'm in this office, I can see what's in this office, I can't see what's in the next office, or the office over there, office over there.
Yeah.
So me physically, I can access the things in this room, I can't access the things in the next room. Take that to a kind of more logical level, that's microsegmentation. So ZTNA is a way of applying zero trust principles to remote access, where it's a user specific security on the applications and functions and features they're allowed to access, but with continual verification.
Very clear. So Chris, we've talked about some of the technical reasons for implementing SASE, but I'm not a technical person, I'm a user. So does this help me or impact me at all as a user? How is this going to improve or change my experience?
Sure. So fundamentally, yes, it will. So in a number of different ways. So if you look at the first part of it as the SD-WAN element of the SASE architecture, SD-WAN is architected around a way of routing traffic that is the best path for that traffic. So what you're doing is you're optimally passing traffic through the network based on where it's going, what the user is, whether it's priority traffic, whether it isn't. So what you're doing in effect is building a network that by default builds user experience into the equation, because it's trying to make sure that the things that need to go as fast across the network as possible do so. And when you're looking at applications and features, it's trying to find the quickest way to get there. So it's continually looking at optimizing the experience from you. And then if you look at the SSE platforms, again, many of the large vendor SSEs have direct peering with all the major cloud platforms off the back of them. There's one vendor where they actually, one of their demos is, if I go direct to Azure, here's my round trip time. So basically how long it takes me to get there. If I go through this cloud platform, cloud security platform, it's half the time. So they actually got a quicker time going through the security platform than going direct, because through direct, you're in basically the kind of wider world of the internet. Whereas going through the security platforms, they have direct,
like a fast lane.
Literally, there's some cable connecting Azure to this platform. So there's a number of the large SSE platforms that are optimized for that connectivity, because What they want to try and do is remove themselves as a bump in the wire. If people introduce too much delay or problems, human nature is to go, I won't bother with that. I'll try and work out a way of getting around it. So what you're trying to do is, as an IT function, is deliver the kind of service and the connectivity and the security with as little implementation delay as possible, so that it just happens as a utility. The silent network you said earlier, that's what people are trying to get to, and that's what SASE's been designed to try and help with. It's that streamlined integration of the SD-WAN and the cloud security, is that the security is on path to where you're actually going. So it means the whole architecture's been optimized for user experience.
So sounds very cool. But from a user perspective, and I'm sitting in front of my user, basically what it sounds like, there's some clever technology behind the scenes, and it just means that I get my video, I get my streaming, I get my access to my SAP systems
100%.
in a fast, secure way. And that's kind of it, really. So it'll actually do what it's supposed to do. It will be silent and secure.
Yes. So when the principle of it is that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to log into anything. The security is applied by default.
So it's an even easier for a user.
There is nothing for a user to do. You open your laptop or your desktop up in the morning, you log into your general domain, and in the background, the security is fired up. So there's nothing to do. You don't have to sign into anything. You don't actually physically do anything. There's no bump in the wire, and it's designed to be as optimal as possible for the user. Yeah, and the idea is that SD-WAN will allow you to have a Teams call and be downloading something and also have some emails firing off concurrently, and it will organize those into the right priority so that the thing that needs to get through, which is the Teams call, gets priority across the network. So yes, they're designed to try and work with the users to say, here's the best experience we can give you. A lot of them have now started to implement experience monitoring as a tool as well, so you can actually measure this. So
yeah, and then that will be as relevant whether I'm in a cafe or in the office or on a dial-up mobile network.
100%.
Fantastic. That's good. Okay, so let's kind of think about an environment where a customer has waved a magic wand and they're already now on a fully compliant SASE architecture. So what are the key benefits? Just fairly simple. What are the key benefits that they're going to find at the end of this successful implementation?
Okay, so there's a number of them, and they cover sort of both security, operational, and user experience. Okay, so from a security perspective, it's that ubiquitous connectivity, but ubiquitous security. It's that consistency of approach across your users wherever they are. So that's number one, is you're getting a consistent security posture.
Right.
You're optimizing your infrastructure to handle the applications the way they need to be, which means that your user experience improves because SaaS applications will perform better because they're being passed through the network quicker. Teams traffic will work better because it's being prioritized over other traffic. But it's about being very granular in how you do that. And from a reporting and management perspective, it's a much simplified architecture, increasingly so if you go for a single vendor SASE architecture. So there are vendors who do the entire stack in one vendor stack. So you're looking at a lot of simplification of the architecture there. You're looking at simplification of the tooling. You're looking at more holistic reporting and visibility across these. So as an organization, your users are getting a better experience. Security should be better and more comprehensive, and also able to be updated and new features added in a kind of do it once, it applies widely. From an operational perspective, there's simplification in terms of the tooling. The visibility is much stronger. And a lot of the data you can drive out of these platforms now is also becoming more and more important to users as they're becoming more data-driven as organizations. And the way that their data passes across their network and their infrastructure is as almost important as the end goal itself sometimes. So yeah, it's about consistent security, operational simplicity and visibility, and user experience is heightened and improved.
And then the one that I thought you might mention from an MD perspective is, if I'm simplifying things and it's easier to manage and I'm getting rid of legacy, do we think it's going to be lower cost to manage?
It can be. It's not always a direct cost model comparison. If you were to say, I'm going to deploy firewalls everywhere, then yes, there's obviously incremental kind of savings you can do there. I think it's more around the fact that you're building an architecture that allows your users to be working from wherever they are and be consistently handled through the infrastructure, consistently secured. And that's the value that you're kind of driving into it. Yes, there are cost benefits to doing this as well. If you're moving away from a legacy MPLS estate, for example, they tend to be quite rigid in how they're architected. and there'll be delivery and operational overheads in managing those that aren't there when you're looking at an SD-WAN perspective. So there are savings to be made. It's not always a nice, easy, I'm going to make a massive saving moving from A to B. It's more around the operational benefits, the user benefits, and the security benefits.
Got it. Thanks. Okay, so far I'm getting that SASE is probably the way forward with this zero trust, and I get better users, experiences, and better security as well, and simpler architecture. So that's fantastic. But why Axions? Why are we talking about this? What's the benefit of customers working with us?
I think there's a number of reasons. One is that we understand the different component parts intrinsically. So we've got a very long history of working in networking. We understand the networking stack fully, right down to the ground.
How many years have we been working in networking for, Chris?
I had more hair and it was a different colour when we started working in networking. SD-WAN, we understand intrinsically as well. We were very early on adopters with SD-WAN. As you mentioned earlier, we've been doing SD-WAN managed services for 10 years nearly. So we were one of the early adopters for that and one of the first people to have a solid, proper managed service around that. So we've got a lot of operational experience at what people want, what people need the service to do, but also being able to bring lessons learned in from the wide projects we're working on across a number of different verticals to give us a best in breed sort of approach to how we architect the solutions. I think the managed services infrastructure we've got is very well baked in. We've got a very, very strong managed service capability, and that covers across the network, the security, the cloud security. So the whole SASE architecture is run by one operations team rather than a number of different kind of component parts. So we've got a very strong capability across the network and the security from a design perspective. We've got a lot of history in doing it, so we understand the pitfalls, the things that can go wrong. We've got a very strong pedigree in deployment and migration, which tends to be one of the biggest challenges you have when you're looking at changing your architecture. Once it's in, there are challenges, but they're manageable. Working out the one to move to, there are challenges, but it's workable. The actual capability to design to do the implementation, the migration, and the transition of a customer from one architecture to another is quite specialised, and we've been very, very, very strong in that over the last couple of years. We've got some very large global customers who've put their full trust into us to take them on that journey, and yeah, it's something that we're really kind of keen to maintain.
And I think that's what some people might not understand, that you're moving live services, production services, with people using it from an existing approach and architecture or vendor to a new one. And you know, that is, you can buy the best vendor's tool for the best price, but if you can't make it work and get it live and get it working, and then if it doesn't then give you the benefits you thought it did, then you just wasted a whole heap of time and money, one assumes.
Yes, I mean, and most of the vendors early on were very, very clear about their messaging, and it was all around zero touch provisioning around.
Remember that one, yeah. Just press a button and it all just works.
It's wizard driven, it's really easy. And yes, I could get a complete novice to come in and design and build an SD-WAN architecture and it would probably work. Would it do everything the customer's asking for? No. Would it hit all of the key business objectives that they had as an organization and needed to underpin? Probably not. Would it help them in terms of understanding the infrastructure that they're moving from, understanding the architecture they're moving to, and then working out how to do that transition with as little impact to the customer as possible? Probably not. So I think there's the key piece we've understood here is that we're leveraging the experience we've had over the last 20 years at designing, implementing, and migrating complex infrastructures. And this is another complex infrastructure that we're moving from one transition to another. So Axions are well placed in this whole SASE market because we understand what the legacy infrastructures are. We understand how that works. We understand the next generation architectures and why why you'd move to those sort of architectures. And importantly, we understand very, very well how we get you from one to the other.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key part when you're looking at a partner, is you need to understand someone who can take you on that journey rather than say, once it's in, I can look after it, or I can sell you the platform. The actual design piece is absolutely critical.
Yeah. And I guess you can help customers choose the right vendor, because we're vendor agnostic, but we're specialists in our chosen few, as it were. So we have one assumes a variety of options, but we understand them deeply rather than doing every single one that's out in the market. Is that the case?
Agreed. So if we were to say we're a vendor agnostic, I think there's currently 48 SD-WAN vendors. I believe there are 20 plus SSE platforms on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. There's probably a couple that haven't made that.
Right.
So we'd be looking at hundreds of technologies if we were to say we're fully agnostic. So what we've done is we've looked at the use cases we've hit over the years. We've looked at the kind of customers we interact with. We've looked at the use cases and the way that the market's evolving too. We've looked at the kind of major players, and we've pulled together a selected portfolio of technology vendors who we know will perform and deliver for what customers are asking for in different areas and different focus points. But also very, very importantly, we understand how to integrate them together. So there's the single vendor stacks where it's one vendor does the SD-WAN and the SSE. There's multi-vendor where it could be a different SSE platform to an SD-WAN platform. And what we've done is we've worked a portfolio of platforms that we know we can integrate either individually or together. So we've got the ultimate flexibility to build around where our customers are trying to get to.
And because we've specialised in those handful of vendors, it means our relationships are very, very well established and very senior in there, so we can cut through a lot of
100%
technical or executive management if we need to, and get the results that our customers demand from us.
Definitely. And we're seen very much as a safe pair of hands by those vendors. We're seen as that
referrals from
that partner that can definitely take on complex migrations, complex implementations, complex managed services, where the customer is very, very discerning. We're never going to work in the t-shirt size mass market area where it's I just want an SD-WAN because I've been told I need it, and then it's small, extra small, medium, large, extra large. We work very well in the arena where the customer goes, I have a very defined business case I have to try and meet. I've translated that into technical requirements. I need you to verify the technical requirements meet my business case, and I need you to deliver as close to this business case as humanly possible. And that's our utter focus, is delivering on that. And that can change. So business cases evolve, managed service requirements evolve, designer requirements evolve. Businesses don't tend to sit there for 3 years or 5 years and don't do anything new. They'll bring out new services, they'll bring out new features, new applications, new functions internally. And we're very, very clear that we try to evolve our services to work with our partners and our customers, so that the managed service is as relevant to them on the last day of the last year as it was on the first day of the first year. So it's about that, working with our customers as a partner to make sure that they are maintaining that business case hit the whole way through the duration of the contract.
To also sum that up from my perspective quite simply, is that vendors, our existing customers, and hopefully our new customers trust us.
100%.
Got it. Thanks. Okay, Chris. So SASE sounds like it's something that customers are having and maturing into, or they're looking at it potentially now. But obviously with cost pressures, they might be thinking about delaying that for another year. So what would you say to those customers if they're choosing to delay looking at this architecture?
I mean, budget constraints are budget constraints, and there's sometimes nothing you can do about it. But what I would say is, the challenge with not moving to this sort of next generation of architectures is that you're still looking at quite a complex environment. You're looking at platforms that typically are starting to go end of life. So you're running into that whole end of support process piece. You tend to find that you can't drive the level of visibility that you want out of those sort of legacy platforms, which means that if you're becoming a data-driven organization, there's big gaps in your data sources. I think a big one is the ever-growing attack surface that's out there at the moment, and the fact that there have been some very high-profile incidents. I think most boards now are acutely aware that security is a very, very key piece, and it's something that they need to be moving towards. There's also the compliance side. So if you're looking at NIST or DORA or even GDPR, some of these are now mandating that you put in place specific user-based security measures. So there's a number of reasons why moving forward is a good idea. The user experience piece is a huge one. If your user experience isn't good enough, what tends to happen is people fall to shadow IT. So if you're in a legacy infrastructure, what that would mean is my internet's slow because it's going through X firewall and whatever gateways. I'm just going to twin onto my phone and I'll bypass all the security that's there. So you're introducing issues and challenges by in effect IT being very, very visible. And as we mentioned earlier, the idea of IT is that it becomes almost in the background and it's an enabler, and it's that bump in the wire is gone. If IT becomes too big a bump in the wire, human nature is to try and work around it. So there's a number of reasons why staying on legacy architectures is a challenge, and I think the challenges are only going to increase.
And the other thing that I think about as MD is the people and the skills we've got in the business. So am I right to assume that if people are running legacy systems, then they're going to be less excited about that for their career? They're going to be moving to other companies or other vendors that have got this newer architecture. So it might be an issue as well to retain these kind of skills in this patchwork of security architectures that might be in the legacy.
100%. And also you're looking at the fact that if you talk to most customers, most of the conversations I have, what they want their IT team to be doing is looking at the next way to do things. They're looking at new technologies or new ways of working that improve the kind of the productivity, but also the accessibility of data, but also the way they work with it. So organizations want their IT teams to be looking forwards, not head down in the day to day.
Yeah.
With a legacy architecture, you tend to find a lot of your IT team are tied up in the management of that infrastructure because it's so many disparate pieces, and it means that yes, you're going to end up with people who are sort of pigeonholed as the firewall guy or the kind of
Fixers.
Yeah, the guy that does
together.
Yeah, the guy that does the kind of proxy and those sort of things. But fundamentally, your IT team tend to be tied up in doing the do rather than thinking forwards and then working out how IT can be an enabler for the organization to move forward.
It's got to add value. Got to add value to the business. Got it. Thanks. Okay, so if one of our customers is thinking about moving towards this new architecture, this SASE model, then should they go about that?
Well, I mean, the first thing to do is to talk to the line of business and understand what their requirements are. I think it's very easy to come in a pre-formed idea of, this is what we've got now. I want a sort of a cloudified version of that, please. What you're doing is you're missing out most of the actual users who you're going to actually have in place. So very much talk across the business and poll all of the stakeholders across the organization as to what they think they need to do now, what they think they're going to need to do in the next couple of years. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to build an architecture that's flexible around how the business is moving forwards. So are there certain applications that you're using in SaaS platforms? Are there certain locations where there's a data center that you have your own data center on-prem, and what applications are you hosting there? Are you retaining those? Are you moving those to infrastructure as a service or SaaS? How are you all, architecting your organization? And IT are aware of probably 60% of the conversations going on, which is why they need to understand from HR what applications they're looking at, and from finance what applications they're looking at, and what the model is in terms of where their DevOps is being done if they're running DevOps, and how they're securing that. And all of these then need to go into the pot, and then you then work out from that what your services need to be able to identify, move as efficiently as possible across the infrastructure and secure.
Okay, so let's say I've done all that. I've got from my perspective as well, one thing I always kind of challenge customers with is what might you do in 3 to 5 years? Because this stuff you don't want to replace every few years. So if you're going on a big M&A spend, then that, back in the SD-WAN only days, then that really helped with that kind of model as well. Or some customers might be implementing new very, very high definition virtual reality suites in the marketing that might be incredibly huge bandwidth, but not thinking about it for a few years. So understand those futures. So let's say they've got that now. So how do they then kind of translate that into the SASE architecture world?
So if we split it into two functions, you've got the SD-WAN piece, which is looking at the network evolution. So the network evolution is understanding what they're doing now, where their locations are, what they're trying to access, where they're trying to access those from, and then model that into how the network needs to look going forwards. And then again, it's looking at what the infrastructure is from a security perspective, what their policies are, what kind of applications they're trying to access, where their users are likely to be, what type of users they're likely to be, what devices and endpoints they're likely to be using. And then it's about mapping all of that into a plan and then understanding with the customer how to kind of deploy it best. Just circling back to your M&A question, M&A is a really good use case for SASE, full stop. We've used that plenty of times in the past for, in effect, adopting third-party networks and bringing them into the fold so that those users can use the corporate applications from day one. With SSE, because it's a cloud-based delivery platform, you just have to deploy the client to the users and then make sure that their users are mapped into the policies. If you've got default policies for your organization, it's about organizing what users are under what policies. You can pretty much bring an entire workforce on within a couple of weeks. We've seen organizations move 40,000 users in a weekend. Now, that's quite extreme, but it's doable. So from an M&A perspective, SASE is a really, really nice architecture from both a network and a security perspective, because it gives you that flexibility to absorb the kind of new workforce in from almost day one.
Yeah. And what I was hoping you would also say is that customers should come and speak to us with these requirements, and we can help get that translated into the right choice of vendors.
Yes.
And then help them understand how they can actually go about this from a project perspective, because it's not just about the technology choice, it's about how you actually implemented it. And then we can make sure that we realize all that data gathering exercise that they've had before. So I'm sure that goes without saying.
But no, it's about walking in with what's the question, right? Not walking in with here's the answer, what's the question?
Yeah.
Right. It's walking in and saying, right, what do you need us to do? I mean, I can count, well, less than one hand. I've never had an RFP where we've won it and then we've delivered exactly what the RFP was to ask for. Never. They've never had an RFP.
Qualify that a bit more.
We've never had a tender where someone said, I need this, and they've gone, brilliant, and they've gone, here's a PO, deliver it.
Sure.
What we've had is we've basically gone, right, here's a set of questions to understand that you know what you're talking about. So you, in effect, win the partner position. And then
you work with them closely to understand.
We sit down in a workshop and go, what are you actually trying to do? What is your line of business trying to do? And try to involve wider stakeholders than the teams that typically are involved.
We can tease those questions out.
And then it's about refining down what they actually need and what it needs to do for them. Because like I said at the beginning, what we're trying to do is marry as close as possible to that business case. The technology piece, sometimes people can translate from business to technology quite well, and they get quite a good mapping. Sometimes it's a bit hit and miss, which is why we always fall back to what is the business case? What are you trying to achieve? What are your key principles of your objectives of this actual project? And we make sure that we try and map to those, whether that's exactly what they initially started talking to us about, or whether that's a complete left field and looks nothing like the thing they were originally talking to us.
Yeah.
But the fact that we work with a number of vendors, the fact that we've worked with a number of verticals, we've worked across many kind of countries internationally, we understand all the variables that you need to kind of pull together to build these. And therefore, it's a case of we've got some real big brains in the room. Let's sit down, work out with you, your teams. What are you trying to achieve? How do you need this to look? And increasingly, what does the service need to look like as well? How does the service need to look for you? And rather than here's an SLA, here's a KPI, bang, 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 it's what do you need the service to do for you? How do you need this to work with your teams? What interactions do you need? What data would you like to see from us?
Yeah.
Would you like to see more visibility from us? How many platforms do you want access to from a reader-only perspective? Because we're completely transparent. We give people access to the main management platforms so they can see what's going on. There's no hiding behind any black box or any sort of managed sort of amorphous mess. It's a very transparent engagement, and we work very closely with our customers to make sure we deliver.
So get the business to clarify their bits, and then we can work with you to translate those into the right project and the right platform choice, and then deliver back to the business what they think they were asking for in the first place. And then hopefully CISOs and CIOs can have a restful night. So I think that sounds good.
Full night and breathe again. Yes.
Sounds good.
If you're actively looking at SASE or other areas you'd like us to help you with, please click the link below or fill out the form and we will get back to you.